moving on, we see a Mr. Perfect promo. It's pretty much just the same as every Mr. Perfect promo, where it's just a perfect pun. I think he says something like, "You might be excellent, but you're not perfect." So Mr. Perfect is going to win the IC title match. So next up, Bret the Hitman Hart defeated Mr. Perfect to win the Intercontinental Championship in a whopping 18 minutes and 4 seconds. It should be worth noting here that this is Bret Hart's first singles push. He'd been a tag team with the Anvil for like 6 years, and this was him branching off as a singles competitor. His first singles championship. It's also worth noting here, I don't know if you knew this, but if you thought there was anything off with Mr. Perfect, he'd actually had a really badly injured back. He had some kind of bulging disc or something.
Oh,
he was struggling to walk, but he really wanted to put over Bret, really wanted to have this great match and pass the torch somewhat to Bret. So he agreed to do this match and do the favor for Bret. And after this, he ended up taking months and months off. He had to have back surgery. So just bear that in mind if you're giving the match critique.
I didn't notice that. But if he was trying to give an excellent match, he absolutely succeeded. I really enjoyed this match. I actually think it was my favorite match that we've covered so far on the podcast.
Really? Yeah. Well,
I thought it was excellent. Really good.
This is probably the match that this show is most well known for. I think the things this show's most well known for is this match and then the wedding later on. But this is definitely this match. People still talk about this match today. I thought,
do they?
It's yeah. People
I'm
love
not surprised.
This match.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean it's two wrestlers that everyone loves as well, Bret Hart and Mr. Perfect. So people still talk about this match all the time, and Bret Hart talks about it in his book and everything else. So yeah, classic match. And
it was so good. Yeah,
just the movements, the selling.
Yep.
Mr. Perfect early on takes that hip toss and he kind of spins. It's kind of
when
like
he spins, like it's like if you have a log of wood and you just throw it and it spins like that way. But he's a human being with apparently a herniated disc or something. You said,
yeah,
that's
it's just
insane. Yeah,
Mr. Perfect. He really was the perfect man to play Mr. Perfect. That character, because he could just do so much perfectly and just flawlessly. I think also when you think of this match, I also think about the spot. I think Mr. Perfect goes to leave. Bret goes to grab him and like rips his
pulls his leotard off. Yeah. And he's just, and then he turns into the type of wrestler that you don't like, where it's just the black trunks and black boots.
Well, no, that's at the end. You're getting ahead of yourselves. I mean, in the match, he rips the leotard.
Yes, he does.
He's pretty much wrestling the whole match with one, half his singlet with one strap up and the other's like hanging off him. So
he does.
It's a pretty cool visual. This match, also a big part of this match, Bret Hart kicking out of the perfect plex, which the commentators make a really big deal out of. Like, no one's ever kicked out of the perfect plex, and the crowd do go nuts. I'm pretty sure Ultimate Warrior kicked out of this move like a few months before this, but either way, don't let the truth get in the way of a good story or a good sell on wrestling commentary. So that seemed to work really well. But yeah, just the back and forth of this. There's one point Bret gets pushed off the ring apron. He used to just spot he'd get pushed off the ring apron and hit the barricade. Here, poor photographer gets in the way.
It's a photographer, man,
And the photographer looks like he doesn't really know what to do at all. But yeah, Mr. Perfect, like one point, Bret gives Mr. Perfect a hair bill, like grabs his hair, throws him over, and Mr. Perfect somehow takes this bump where he takes it, then slides all the way back where he crutches his nuts on the ring post, like just perfect. Or even later when Bret is kicking Mr. Perfect's leg and Mr. Perfect is doing like a whole backflip from being kicked in the leg or having his leg swept from underneath him. So you forget how just amazing and good Mr. Perfect is. And you wouldn't be able to tell there's the same guy that we saw on our Thunder episode, which would have been 9 years after this in WCW. But here, despite having the bulging disc and the bad back, it's just absolutely on fire. They do this really creative spot where Mr. Perfect drops like a leg drop onto Bret's groin or crutch. I don't know if it's a low blow. Kind of looks like a low blow to me, but he does that and then he goes to do it again. But Bret catches his legs, twists them together and turns it round into a sharpshooter.
Yeah.
Really creative finish. And you can tell Mr. Perfect's back is bad because the referee just calls for the bell
instantly
right away.
calls. Yeah. I noticed that. I was like, oh, did he actually? submit, but then first of all, I remember you told me, I think it was in the first episode, people don't always tap out when they're ready to
No.
go. So I let that go. But now with what you've told us now about his bulging disc or something, that would make sense that referee would just call it like ASAP
Yeah.
to protect him, because that's gross when you think about it.
Well, Bret
So
sat
good on
back
him.
on it pretty hard as well. Like, it didn't look
Okay.
comfortable. It did not look comfortable.
Yeah,
I
that was
should
a
know, of
great
course,
match.
you know.
Yeah, because yes, we found out in episode 3.
Twice
You,
in the
yeah.
sharpshooter. But yeah, I think the Dave Meltzer, the Meltzer report, I was just doing a little bit of research on this show, gave it 4 stars. So, but I don't know. For me, I think there's nothing really to flaw this match on. I don't know how you can't give it 5.
Yeah, we don't give individual match stars, do we? But I would say this would be, well, we tend to give the end thing, but if we were to, I want to, by the way.
Okay.
I reckon we should. I would say this is a 5-star match.
It's hard to put flaws in it. Everything made sense. Everything looked good. Everything looked great. It's just, a really great story, a really great match. I'm sure Bret's, I know he's very proud of this match. And yeah, I think like this sort of match. So there's this perception that the IC title was the workhorse title. And you always have wrestling fans say that, like, well, the world championship was for like the big draws like Hogan, but the IC title was for the workhorses.
Really at, yeah.
But I kind of feel like that's a misconception. Like, obviously, Bret was a workhorse when he had the IC title, and Mr. Perfect was. But there was lots of guys that weren't workhorses that had the IC title, like Warrior and Honky Tonk Man, who I really like Honky Tonk Man, by the way. But like, people have made this kind of perception up over the years. Like, it's the workhorse title. It's kind of like, not really. I don't really agree with that, but I think it's because of matches like
this. Yeah, they get stuck in people's memories, and rightfully so.
It's interesting as well, the contrast between this and then what we're going to see later as the main event, like the difference in wrestling. So maybe this was the show where they're like, maybe we need to make our heavyweight title more like this match and less like the heavyweight matches that we're doing, because this just blew everything else out the water.
Yeah, it is match-wise, it's downhill from here. It was super good. It was so good.
So we see Bret Hart's parents. They're making a return to the show just 1 week later. We talked about
in the crowd. Yeah.
Yes. Then we talked about the Hart family last week, of course, on Canadian Stampede. But here, Stu and Helen Hart are in the crowd, and that's what they announced. But it seems like Bruce is trying to get back in again. They don't mention him, but you see him poking his head in the camera. So they're celebrating in the crowd, and Lord Alfred Hayes tries to get some words with Stu. Stu at the time.
Go ahead.
Stu is trying to. He's like hugging Bret. Bret's come out into the crowd. He's like hugging his mum. Stu's there, patting him on the back, and Lord Alfred Hayes asks him like, "Oh, this is great. Like, what do you think about this, Stu?" And at first, Stu doesn't really listen to him. So then Stu turns to him and goes, he says, "Oh, it's wonderful." And he's about to say, "It's wonderful," blah blah
and
blah,
carry on,
and carry on. And before,
like, okay.
Before Stu can spit it out, Lord Alfred Hayes he goes, "It's wonderful." Lord Alfred Hayes just turns around. "Oh, I think he's a bit lost for words, or I think he's speechless. Like, back to you." It just completely cuts him off.
It was awkward. It was funny though. It was so much was going on, so it's understandable. But just the fact that you can see Stu Hart's mouth still moving, but nobody's picked up on the mic, and he's cut back to camera.
Well, Stu continues talking.
Yeah,
he continues talking. Then realizes that he's not being interviewed anymore, and the microphone is not in front of him, and just kind of like stops and kind of looks like disheartened. I was kind of like, oh, like
it's a little bit sad, but
it was a little bit sad. I don't know what happened with Lord Alfred Hayes, how he managed to, because like it wasn't even like Stu really stopped. He just was. I don't know if they were running out of time or what. But
he didn't stop. He just took a while to start, but then he was giving his opinion, and then it was a little bit awkward.
Lord Alfred Hayes, by the way, I don't know if you noticed this, but he's British.
Yeah, I didn't. Okay, I noticed that. Yes. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. But he was a wrestler back in the day, and then he worked for the WWF for years as a announcer and everything else. He's actually one of my favorite. I love Lord Alfred Hayes.